And thanks so much for staying with us here in the big show. On today's WLOX Book Club, we're looking at a book that frames the fight for beach and school desegregation, primarily in Biloxi. And it's a great story, The Wade In. I'm sure you've heard of it. Wading in Desegregation on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Author Amy Lemco is right here to tell us about the book. Good to see you, Amy, and thanks for joining us on the Port
Thank you for having me.
Why did you get interested in this subject? Why is this something you felt compelled to write about?
I'm always interested in underserved histories, and if there is a triumph over obstacles, even better. I remember hearing about the Wade-ins as an adult, so not in school when I probably should have heard about it, and I was hearing about it from the older generation who grew up here in Biloxi who also hadn't heard about it, and they probably were learning about it because around the 50th year anniversary there started to be newscast about it.
Yeah, we did a lot
celebrations
of things at the 50th.
Yeah.
So it was 1955, essentially, the
Yeah.
famous Wade In with Dr. Gilbert Mason, who I was telling you, I fortunately had an opportunity to interview Dr. Mason a couple of times. And it was brave, it was courageous, it was amazing, and it was necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's hard to even really imagine how brave it was in terms of the violence that was happening across the nation at that moment. So it was pretty frightening.
Mm-hmm. And even the Wade-in ignited a little bit of violence.
Yes.
Not a lot, but there was quite a bit of violence surrounding the event.
Yeah.
And really, if you think about it from a constitutional perspective, it was really not allowing blacks on the beach in Harrison County, taxation without representation. So not only was it another vile form of racism, it was unconstitutional.
Yes, and I think one of the things that was most interesting to me to learn about was like the State Sovereignty Commission. So not only were their taxpayer dollars being used to upkeep the beach that they weren't allowed to be on illegally, and the schools, again, illegally to be kept out of, but also to actively fund their oppression through the State Sovereignty Commission and other kind of watchdogs. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and there's been much written about the infamous, notorious Sovereignty Commission. And I hope people, if they don't know about it, look into that. So I'm really not familiar, even though I know a lot about the Wade-in. I know there were black schools and there were white schools, and we'll just use Biloxi as an example because it was really in all the cities. But what really went into the desegregation of schools?
Oh, well, the Brown versus the Board of Education had already happened, and then the southern states took their time with they were allowed time, and they just never did anything.
To make the transition, they were
Yes.
allowed time, and they purposefully probably dragged it out, is that what you're saying?
Yes. And after the violence from the third Wade-in, the NAACP got involved, and Medgar Evers out of Jackson came down and was helping. And through those conversations, they said, well, we need to push into the courts to finally desegregate the school. And I didn't know that Biloxi was the first school in the state under college level to open its doors. Other counties desegregated at the same time, but just the calendars of the school year, Biloxi Lopez Elementary was the first one to open its doors to a desegregated.
Alrighty, well, it's all right here in the book that you see, Wading In, Desegregation on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, when the civil rights movement really hit a crescendo in Biloxi and in Harrison County, and Amy Lemco writes all about it. Thank you, Amy, so much. I know you have a book signing event over at Past Christian Books.
On the 25th at 6 p.m. It's the event center across from the Past Christian Bookstore, and you can RSVP. We're going to have some drinks and a moderated discussion. It's going to be really fun.
Great. Well, I know you live out on the West Coast, but it's good to have you back on the Gulf Coast.
Thank you so much.
Coming